When I started in the business in '84, commercial real estate was like a second, third, or fourth career for most people. What I love about commercial real estate is that it's one of the purest forms of meritocracy there is. When I started, I had no computer on my desk. We didn't have fax machines. There were no cell phones. We carried rolls of quarters around. Remarkably, the extent to which the world has changed over the last 40 is going to be dwarfed by what's going to happen over the next 5. AI is unbelievably powerful.
Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. #Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. And of course, now and always, keep hustling. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, the one and only, and I can truly say that, legend of New York City and beyond, Bob Knakal. Bob, thank you so much for being here today.
Aaron, great to be with you today. I'm really looking forward to this. Thanks for having me on.
I feel like we could spend the entire time talking about the New York City subway map. You made the legendary map room in New York City. Listeners, especially those not from New York, will just think that we are being stuck up elitist New Yorkers. I'm kind of okay with that, and I assume you are too, because it's just in our blood, but that's not what the podcast is about. But I just, to speak to another, I'm not a legendary New Yorker, I hope to be one day, but a true long time legend of the city, seen it evolve, and that's part of what I want to talk about today. Really, again, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Aaron. Are you calling me old?
I am not calling you old. I'm calling you of a good vintage.
There you go. I love it.
Good vintage.
Love it.
I want to start by asking you, your career, although you've been relatively in the same industry and doing the same, some people will say the same thing for decades. When you started, it wasn't as cool. The New York real estate business wasn't something that teenagers, even in New York, grew up saying, this is what I want to do. Yet you started at it, built this incredible business and this incredible legacy, but it had to come from somewhere. What was the drive to be the dominator of New York, for lack of a better term?
Well, I think, the business certainly has changed very, very profoundly over the years. When I started in the business in '84, commercial real estate was like a second, third, or fourth career for most people. Today, there are so many times I speak at colleges or do podcasts for colleges, and so many young people are really into real estate, and it's certainly become much more mainstream. Real estate investing used to be for cowboys. There weren't that many institutional players that really were in it. Now it's a very mainstream institutional asset class. And I'll tell you, I got into the business completely by accident, very famously walking into Coldwell Banker thinking the place was a bank during spring break my freshman year, trying to get a banking job that would look good on my resume. They were the only ones hiring college kids for the summer. Took the job, loved it, went back my next 2 summers, and then started with CB in Manhattan when I got out of school. And I think that, it's always been part of my personality, I think, to go all in on the things I did. They say anything worth doing is worth doing well. I think I always subscribed to that. And so always wanted to do something well. And what I love about commercial real estate is that it's one of the purest forms of meritocracy there is. You get out of it exactly what you put into it. And I love that aspect. I always knew no matter what I did, I was going to work hard, give it my all, and I wanted to be compensated for that. And so commercial real estate afforded me the opportunity to do that, and feel very, very blessed that I stumbled into a job that is not only my vocation, but it's also my hobby. I absolutely love what I do.
I have said many times on the podcast, and people have in 2025, when we started 2024, many people said, hustle culture. You're trying to breed, that's not in now. People are, it's lifestyle. And my response is that if everybody defines their hustle and puts that in the forefront of their mind and in their goals, that's what it's about. For some people, it's starting a business. For some people, it's the pressures of starting that business and being entrepreneurial is not for them. For some people, it's sales. For some people, it's service. But as you said, I believe that what you view as commercial real estate as being the purest form of meritocracy, I also believe that business and hustle in 2025 is becoming a pure form of meritocracy. And if people find their passion and define their hustle, they can get the merits that they want. And but there are people who don't want to have a house with a white picket fence. They want to live in a van, and I think van life is very cool. It's not for me and my wife and 5 kids, but you're able to chase what you want, and that's the beauty of that is the meritocracy. It's defining the goal, and everyone can achieve it. What did you say to the naysayers? Because it wasn't cool. So how did you push past
Well,
that
the
piece?
the biggest the biggest naysayer of all probably was my dad. My mom and dad paid for me to go to the Wharton School, and when my father, who was an educator, he was started as a science teacher, and then was a vice principal, and then ultimately a principal of a high school. Fortunately, not my high school, but he was the principal of a high school. And as an educator, my dad was not exactly thrilled that his son, who went to the Wharton School, was getting a commission salesman's job in real estate. So that
You
took a
should have been
little
a
bit.
banker. You wanted to be a banker. That's what was supposed to happen.
Yeah, took a little bit of convincing. But I remember I started in July of '84. At the end of 1986, Paul and I had done, Paul Massey, who was my business partner for 30 years, we did a full page ad in the Real Estate Weekly with tombstones of all of our transactions from 1986. And I brought the paper. My dad lived in New Jersey. Brought the paper to him to show him this ad that we did. And he said he was very impressed, etc. But then the next time I went to his house, went down to the basement, and he had actually taken the ad from the paper, had it framed, and put it on the wall downstairs. And that's when I knew my dad was proud of me. So that was a great moment for me in my life. And I think my dad at that point accepted that his son was a salesman, a commission salesman, and had never gotten a salary, never would get a salary, and he was okay with that. So took a little convincing, but I think he's very happy for me.
I love that. I wish that we could have videotaped. I wish it was the time of vlogs, and we could have videotaped the first time you walked down those steps. Because I think most children who are close with their parents, and sons with fathers more, and daughters with mothers, I assume. I've just a son who was blessed to work with his father for 15 years. There's no greater feeling. There's no greater reward. Parenting is pretty rewarding, but those rewards, I think, come a little bit later. That those moments are I'm jealous. Although I
Yeah,
had similar, but I'm jealous of that.
yeah, no,
The
it was great. My mom died in 1983, at the end of my junior year in college, so she never got to see me professionally. But my dad didn't die until 1991, so he got to see the early years at CB. He saw me start my own company, and saw the company get off the ground a little bit. So that was it was great to know that someone who really uh, couldn't relate to business in any way at all, was proud of what his kid was doing, and that was
and I think that ultimately speaks to success in the hustle, which is it's it's not always about the dollars and cents, but I think that parents and want their children to succeed in what they're doing. Everybody, spouses, those who love us want us to succeed. the dollars and cents are less important than you did something. I wasn't so sure about it. That's fine. But I can see that you've seen the success and you're happy with that and you're enjoying your success. And that's really what people can ask for. That's all that parents can ask for or partners can ask for. What's the most surprising change that you've seen over time in the scope of commercial real estate? And I want to take the COVID 24 months out.
Yeah, no, I think without a doubt it is how the world has changed from a technology perspective. I'll take you back to 1984. When I started, I had no computer on my desk. We didn't have fax machines. There were no cell phones. We carried rolls of quarters around. So we'd go to, there aren't even phone booths anymore, but we used to go to, use the quarters to go to the corner and put the quarter in the phone booth to call people when they were late to show up for a meeting.
It was
Um,
great when the phone booth rang back. That was the best part, and you got to
that's
answer it.
right. With the operator telling you to put more money in. But it was, the technology really has changed things so dramatically. And I think remarkably, the extent to which the world has changed over the last 40 is going to be dwarfed by what's going to happen over the next 5. AI is unbelievably powerful, changing the world. The rate of change within AI is so fast that, I think we're going to be in an extraordinarily different place in 5 years than we are today.
Do you think that we're better off? Do you think that the person starting today, not from an economic climate perspective, because that you have seen ups, downs, and everything in between, but the guy who starts out or the gal who starts out now out of college, you of 1984, I think you said 83, 86, sorry.
84.
84,
84,
I
I
was
got out
close.
of
Yeah, 86 was when you started your business, right? The Do you think that we're better off because of that? And I don't mean obviously I was going to say that millennials are lazy and Gen Z is a bunch of lazy people, but in terms of the accessibility, the accessibility or those people that embrace the technological advantage, let's say that they have the same work ethic, but we're bogged down with the cell phones and the no vacations and all that versus the scrambling to catch the payphone, not knowing if, you know,
Yeah, look,
what was going on in the world.
I think it's a very, very different world. And is it better or worse? I don't know whether it's better or worse. It's certainly very, very different. Back in the old days, um, I used to go into the office on Saturdays and Sundays because if you weren't in the office, you weren't working, right? You couldn't work from home. You had no connectivity. Maybe you could bring home something to read, but effectively, you really couldn't work if you weren't in the office. So, it's very, very different today. I think that what technology has changed probably is having a bigger impact on society in general than in the business world. I think this is an issue that we're going to have to deal with, as I think technology is going to take the place of many, many low income paying jobs. And we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. There is going to be an increasingly um, uh, growing sector of society that's not going to be able to take care of themselves. And so that as a society, we're going to have to deal with that and figure out how to take care of those people. But I think from a business perspective, I think that what technology is doing is it's allowing fewer people to do more. And what I mean by that, if you look at the way technology has advanced over the decades, you would think, well, gee, everything can happen so fast now. There's got to be a lot more stuff going on. Well, the reality is there were more buildings sold in the 80s than in the 90s, more in the 90s than in the noughts, and more in the noughts than last decade. So actually, the amount of commerce is going down. What technology is doing, it's allowing the individual to be much more productive. So, for instance, there are years over the last 20 years where I've sold 150 buildings. I couldn't sell 150 buildings in the 80s. or in the 90s just couldn't do it. It was
It
impossible.
wasn't enough. The copy machine couldn't work fast enough.
Exactly. So, I think what it's done is it is doing a couple of things. One, it is making the individual far more productive. Number two, I really believe it is marginalizing the need for a broker or someone in the real estate business to be at one of the big firms. You don't need to be at the big firms. Johnny or Sally could be working out of mom's basement in their pajamas and appear to be the big global behemoth that some of these companies are with using technology properly. So I think what's happened is we've seen, over the past 20 or 30 years, there's been a lot of consolidation. I think there's going to be a disaggregation within the business, and you're going to have several people in startup roles. There's not going to be the need to be at big firms. Why are you at a big firm? For access to information? You have access to information as an individual now, the same kind of information the big firms have. Proprietary data, very, very important. But I would argue that, an expert in a niche can have better data than a big firm can. So I think, interestingly, the big firms are saying they're embracing technology, but I think it's scaring the hell out of them because there's less need for an individual to be at a big firm today. And I think what you might see is a lot more startups, a lot more boutique firms starting up, and um, less reliance because of a lack of need to be at a big firm to gain access to things that you used to have to be at a big firm to get.
Yeah, but some people would say that you lose that mentorship, and that early on, the most valuable thing that someone can do is be mentored. So I assume what you're suggesting is that people will spend time training and
Yeah,
then
Aaron, I'm not suggesting that people are going to come out of college and all of a sudden start up their own business, but the people who have been at a firm for 10 years, 15 years, may decide to go open up their own shop as opposed to spending 40 years at the same company.
what do you think the biggest skill that someone can develop over those early years in real estate and outside of real estate that will help them achieve the greatest success either at that firm or on their own?
Yeah, I think it's just understanding the fundamentals. Look, the business has not really changed. Fundamentally, the business has not changed over the past 40 years. The strategies, tactics, and tools available to us have changed, but basically, it's the same business. And so I think understanding the fundamentals of market presence and creating relationships and the fundamentals of how real estate works, those are the building blocks that are important. And then developing the ability to use discipline well. Our business is one, I always say it's a very simple business. It's just really, really hard. And what makes it hard is not the understanding of what to do, it's the actual doing it and having the discipline or being able to use the discipline because we all have access. Every human being has access to the same amount of discipline as anybody else. We just all choose to use it differently. So if you can develop the skill to use discipline well, we always say that, in real estate brokerage, you have to pound the rock and pound the rock. And you're doing these unglamorous, very basic things over and over and over again. And so the stonecutter's creed is pound the rock, pound the rock. So stonecutter comes into the shop in the morning, sits in front of a big piece of stone, and boom, pounds the thing, pounds it 99 times. Nothing has happened. 100th one, boom, the rock splits in half. To the casual observer, they look at that and say, okay, that 100th one was different. Must have been harder, must have been a different mallet, must have been a different angle. But the stonecutter knows, no, not at all. Everything was exactly the same. It's just the 99 blows that came before allowed that 100th one to work. And you have to have the mindset to use discipline in that way in order to do these very basic fundamental things over and over and over again until they work for you.
I once had the nerve of telling my father that he had it easier than me because he could just pick up the phone and call the executives at the insurance companies that we work with and get everything done very simply and very quickly. And they actually listened to him, and that was so easy, and that he made it much harder for me. And his response was, the only reason why I can make those calls is because I pounded the rock 99 times. And it wasn't always like this, but I've reached the 100th. Now, you're right. Now, when I hit it, it's the 100th time and the 101st time, but you didn't see the 99 before that. And I think that that's something that a lot of people, when we talk about keep hustling, when we talk about building those habits or chasing a person's dreams or their hustle or their goals, the goals in sight that we can achieve, so many people are right there. They quit at 97.
Yeah,
And if
and
only
I
they could
think
know
that
that they were almost at 100.
yeah, and we have people growing up in an age where everything is instantaneous. You wanna order any type of food, it can be at your door in 20 minutes. You wanna know who was the 437th person to reach the top of Mount Everest. You Google it, in 26 seconds, you
You
know
don't
who
need to
it
Google
was.
it. You just hold the button on your phone and ask it.
Yeah, so it everything in society today, everyone is used to things instantaneously. That's not the way sales works. Sales is a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to do the things fundamentally. Your dad probably had to put in decades of work so that when he called the chairman of the insurance company, the guy took his call.
100%. 100%. Do you still enjoy the sales?
I love it. I
Why?
absolutely love it. It's
I knew you were gonna say that, but I just,
Yeah, no, look, I love talking to people, and I love the business. I say, it's a job for me. It's my vocation, but it's also my hobby. My life is very, very simple. I spend time with my wife and my 16-year-old daughter. I go to church, I go to the gym, and I sell buildings. And I always say, if my wife and daughter went away for a girls' weekend out of town, I would sell buildings all weekend. I absolutely love doing it.
can you share the most surprising outcome of an interaction that you've had in your career?
Most surprising
Because
outcome.
very often people think that everything happens the way the you put in the 99 blows and you're gonna get the 100. But I find that my hustle is often inspired by the people who didn't think that they were even putting in the 99 blows or didn't think that they were even close to the 100th. And then
Yeah,
something happens or the referral happens or I don't know. You probably have better more stories than I do, but I'm just curious to if
yeah, well,
anything's ever shocked you.
I think what we're always trying to achieve is just to increase the probability of success. Nothing works 100% of the time. Nothing's foolproof. And our business is a probability based business. I know, you know, in Manhattan, south of 96th Street, there's 27,649 properties. The average turnover rate of that stock over 40 years has been 2.6% a year. So what does that tell me? And I assume half the stuff that goes on the market actually sells. That means 5% of the stock is on the market at any one time. That means somebody sells their building and they buy a building in Manhattan. They're going to own it for 40 years before they sell it. So I know what my probability is going into a session of calling or meetings. And so I just try to increase my probability. So what's been the most surprising thing? I would say one of the things that surprised me is the success I've had on making prospecting calls when people hang up on me. I immediately call them right back. And half the time, you'll have a good conversation with the person because they'll be embarrassed they hung up on you. The
No
other half
way.
the time, they're going to slam the phone back down on you again. But I'd say half the time, you say, "Oh, sorry, I think we somehow got disconnected." You'll have half the time you'll have a productive call with that person. That's probably the most surprising
I
thing. I
can't
would
believe that.
have expected everything
I
seamless.
cannot believe that. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. It's interesting you say that because I used to run scared from sales calls. And what I found is that anybody, especially who's in business, is not offended by you asking for their business or to work with them. If they tell you that they're not interested or drop dead or I don't want to speak to you and you don't respect that, that's how things go south. But That is so. One second. I want to get this down because I'm going to try this. When you call someone and you say, it's Aaron Gordon from IW Gordon Associates, I'd love to talk to you about engaging as a trusted advisor or about your insurance portfolio, and they just think you're a solicitation and they hang up. You immediately dial that back?
Immediately. I mean, "Hi, sorry, I think we were disconnected."
That's
And
so
just
New
go
York.
into the spiel.
Nobody out of New York.
Half the time people are gonna talk to you.
But and by that doesn't mean you get the sale half the time, but that just means that you'll have a productive conversation.
Yep.
Nobody outside of New York would ever do that. I'm going to do it. Nobody outside of New York would ever do that. They like run scared and they have to, take a 5-minute break and walk around the block. And yes, I'm disrespecting all of those
I
that
don't know
can't make
what
it in
made
our
me do
city.
it the first time, but the first time I did it, the guy kept talking to me, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do this every time." And half the time, they'll slam the phone down on you again. You just move on to the next one and call that guy again next quarter, and maybe you'll have better luck.
That's amazing. That is, oh gosh, I love that. Your career has, as we said a few times, has spanned across decades. The fundamentals are the same. The technology are different. Yet you said that AI is going to make a drastic change in 5 years that we haven't seen in 40. Where are we in 5 years? In
I
relationship sales businesses, which you and I
Yeah,
are
no,
both in.
look, I think it's still going to come down um, to personal relationships. I always say the real estate business is not real estate; it's information and relationships. And I think what AI has proven to be able to do so far is it is making the funneling process a lot more efficient and effective. What's a funneling process? It's prospecting. It's deal execution. So it clearly is effective on both of those fronts. Where it has the most potential, but is going to be very difficult for the industry to utilize, is on the is on the data interpretation front, and it is extraordinarily powerful. But if you don't have good data going in, you're not going to get good data out, and most of the data in real estate is very poor, mainly because it's not the absolute numbers that matter, it's the direction of the numbers. Are they going up? They going down? How much they going up? How much they going down? And unless you've calculated the data in the same exact way each time, the integrity between numbers in a data set completely falls apart. And I will tell you that I've seen at these big companies, the research people are turning over all the time. Everybody has a different way of what you count, what you don't count, the way you calculate things. And without consistency, there's no integrity in the numbers.
But doesn't that mean that people will lose faith in the data that anybody is giving them because anybody can misinterpret or put in the bad data, which will then give an incorrect result or an incorrect
Well, you
prediction?
have to know who's supplying the data and how is the data calculated. What's the methodology used to calculate the numbers? I have data sets. I've always been a statistics guy. I have data sets that are 40 years old that we use the same exact methodology for calculating things today that we did in 1984. So I've got great quality data. I'm applying AI models to it. The algorithms are spitting out some really wild stuff. And that's a competitive advantage that we have, is that I've always had a very defined methodology for calculating things, and stuck to that methodology over the years.
I love it. And that's what we talk about at Keep Hustling. It's about consistency. It's about sticking to the methodology. It's about evolving with the times, but not losing track of the fundamentals. So, as I said, Mr. Knakal, this is as a born and bred New Yorker, this is a dream for me. So, really, thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing with the guests. Thank you for inspiring our audience because I know that most of our listeners dream of looking back and having the insight that you have and that you've been so kind to share with us. So,
Thanks. Well,
really,
Aaron,
I
if I
appreciate it.
could, I shameless plug for my new book,
Yes, and we're
Selling
gonna link it.
Buildings.
We're gonna link it in the show notes. Everyone should look at it. Everyone should get selling buildings. If for no other reason than I believe I haven't read the whole thing. I looked at the summary. I ordered it, but I believe that your methodology, your story, and your hustle can be applied across multiple industries to almost anything. And if just for that, everyone should read it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I I have my series of Knackle Nuggets, we call them, which are lessons learned over the years. And the interesting thing about the Nuggets is that um, very few of them, there are 100, and probably less than 20 are real estate specific. The overwhelming majority are applicable to any sales environment, and many of them are life lessons. And so the book is kind of an encapsulation of everything I went through on this 40-year journey, the different inflection points that happened in my career when we were faced with a fork in the road. Did we go left? Did we go right? Why did we go that way? What happened? And telling a bunch of deal stories along the way. One of the things I love to share on social media are the deal stories.
I follow it. Everyone should follow you on LinkedIn. You're a
Thanks,
great follow.
thanks.
And by the way, you have an amazing collection of pictures. I can't believe that they've lasted so long.
Thanks. How did the seller react? How did the buyer react? What happened behind the scenes? And so within the book, we're telling deal stories along the way, and those deal stories are very indicative of what was going on in the broader environment at that particular time. And then I wrote it with my broker coach, Rod Santamassimo, and Rod has coached thousands of brokers over the years, and kind of takes a 40,000-foot view on each chapter. And how does this work for the broker? How does this work for the investor? Why did this work? Why did this not work? It takes a look at it very analytically. So it was great. It was great fun. Rod has been my coach since 2011, and one of my best friends now. And it was a real joy to write.
Look at that. You became an author. Your father would be proud.
There you go. That's right.
As you know, we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational and inspirational quote, what it means to them and to their hustle. And with that, I'll say again, thank you, Mr. Knakal, for being here. It's a true pleasure, and the floor is yours.
Well, Aaron, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, shoot me an email anytime, BK at
He
BK.
actually answers. That's how I got him on the podcast. It was shocking. I thought I was going to get passed around, but I really appreciate it.
There you go. My pleasure. So my motivational quote, I'll give you two because I love two of them. The great football coach Vince Lombardi once said, "Winning isn't." Now I'm flubbing it.
Isn't the most important thing. It's the only.
Winning isn't the most important thing. It's the only thing. And the other quote that I love is from Mel Gibson's character in Braveheart, William Wallace, who said, "Every man dies, but not every man really lives." And if that doesn't give you motivation to go for it and live your life to the fullest, I don't know what does.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And always, like Mr. Knakal, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. If you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.